Welcome back to Sports Renegades here on SportsTownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky.
Ryan and I were just talking about the Bulls and Timberwolves game I went to a few weeks ago, and that was a lot of fun. I couldn't believe the atmosphere was as good as it was, but of course we have returning players like Jimmy Butler and Taj Gibson coming back, and then the former coach Tom Thibodeau. Yeah, I thought it was pretty fun. I mean, at the end of that game, you had Jimmy Butler. Everyone thought he was going to take the shot. He passed it off to a wide-open Karl Anthony Towns, and he just ended up missing that three. And that's pretty much how the Bulls ended up winning. And Zach LaVine went toe-to-toe with Jimmy Butler. It was pretty exciting. I think Jimmy Butler had 38 points, and Zach LaVine had 35. So, I mean, they were really good.
That's a pretty solid game right there. That's probably going to be the most exciting game of the year for the Bulls, considering, and it already was probably going to be the best game already just because, the Timberwolves were coming into town with Jimmy Butler and Taj Gibson returning. And
we went into that new atrium, how they built that kind of that atrium over the Michael Jordan statue. Yeah. So we went in there. It was really nice. They got the team store there with Hawks and Bulls gear. That's a pretty nice store, and and it's good because if you go into the atrium, that's how you do your security, so you don't have to take your phone out of your pocket again. You just do that when you go through the atrium, and then there's an entrance to the stadium right from there where you just scan your tickets. So it was pretty good, and they had a cool hat that they gave away. I took a picture of it on Instagram, I think.
They actually gave away a promotion.
Yeah, which they don't do too often at Bulls games.
It's like for a promotion for the one game that was going to be a packed house.
Yeah, well, I think what it was is they have a Chicago artist hat series, so it's like a series of 6 hats that they give away at certain points during the season, and the bill on the hat has a different design that an artist made every year, and we saw the other hats because they showed them on the Jumbotron, and we definitely got the best hat, I think. So it was it was pretty cool. It's like a gray Bulls hat. It's a snapback, but it's a gray Bulls hat with the logo in the front, and then it says like Chicago in red, white, and blue on the bill. So it was pretty cool. But talking about the NBA, the trade deadline came and went, and the Cavaliers really made a lot of interesting moves. Isaiah Thomas whined and then finally got ran out of town.
Yeah, it's pretty clear he didn't fit in with Cleveland.
No, I don't think he did. It was...
he didn't even play many games for them, and it was so obvious that it wasn't working out.
Yeah, I don't even know if it was like 10 games. It was maybe around 8 to 10 games, and it's just like, I don't know what was going on there. But he didn't want to be there, and he was upset.
I know. I honestly thought it was pretty comical that he went to the Lakers just because they have Lonzo as their point guard, and yet they have a guy they got to get Isaiah Thomas, who was garnering MVP votes last year.
Right. Yeah, and it was pretty interesting. Wade goes back to Miami, but what the Cavs got back, I think, will really help them. They
got a lot younger, and it's like the first game they looked like a brand new team.
Yeah, they got Larry Nance Jr. and Jordan Clarkson from the Lakers, and those are 2 really good.
They got
George Hill, yeah,
Rodney Hood.
A good shooter.
Young guys, and that looked like they're already meshing better than the other guys did.
Right. And that's why, now, see, if they didn't make these moves, I think LeBron maybe would have had strong consideration to leave.
He probably is leaving anyways.
I don't know. I think these moves really maybe made him stay. I think, Dan Gilbert and the ownership maybe kind of made a commitment to we're going to make these moves. We're going to compete this year, and we're trying to compete for the future
Here's
too.
the thing, they didn't give up too much. I know they had to give up their first round pick, not the Brooklyn pick. Except really, for the future they got better. Even if LeBron leaves, they got younger, and they still have that Brooklyn pick, so they'll be able to get a franchise type player.
Yeah, that's true. It's just, it'll be interesting to see, if they can beat Boston this year, if they can beat Toronto. Toronto looks really good this year, but they do that every year, and it seems to not work out. And then you got a team like Washington who's in the 4. It's Toronto, Boston, Cleveland, Washington, Indiana, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Miami. So, Philadelphia is in the 7th seed, which is pretty surprising. But they're a pretty good young team. And all these teams are pretty bunched up together. 3 through 8 are only, decided by 4 games. So it could be pretty interesting. But, yeah, I think Cleveland will take hold, and they might not catch Boston or Toronto, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter for LeBron. He's going to go through them anyway to get to Golden State.
Yeah, well, that would be the best competition, would be LeBron versus Golden State. I think if Boston made it to the finals, they would lose. I
don't really think the swapping Irving for Thomas was that much of an upgrade. Yes, you're getting a guy that hit a game-winning shot in Game 7 of the finals. Yeah. Except,
well, Irving is a better player.
Irving is a better player, except I don't know if it was that much of an upgrade to give up the Brooklyn pick. That was just, obviously they knew they needed to do something. They needed to add a name, and unfortunately for them, they had to trade Isaiah Thomas, who was their star player last year.
Yeah, and another team that is pretty interesting is Indiana, with Victor Oladipo kind of leading the way there. They're 33-25, so they're 8 over 500. And
I don't think anybody or many people were expecting them to be as good as they are.
No, I think when you look at it, they were thinking maybe Detroit would be better than them, and a team like Charlotte could be better than them, but they both have really fallen off. And Detroit was another one who made a trade when they got. When they traded with the Clippers, and Blake Griffin's over there now in Detroit, and that seems to be working out pretty well for them. I don't know what the LA Clippers are doing, but
yeah, it kind of seems like they're gonna have to go into a long and painful rebuild like the Royals. And remember that Clippers rebuild before they got good, before they had Jordan and Chris Paul and Doc Rivers and Blake Griffin.
Yeah,
they were bad for a long time.
Oh yeah, they were horrible. They were really bad, no doubt about that. And let's see, the Bulls are sitting in 12th in the East right now, 12 out of 15. They're 20-37.
Which honestly I think is remarkable considering when they started out 3-18.
Yeah, they started 3-20.
3-20. Oh, they're even worse than I thought.
Yeah, they started 3-20. Then they won something
7 or 8 in a row.
Yeah, they won 7, and then it was 9
when
of 11.
Chris Dunn came back from injury, or no, it was Mirotic. When Mirotic and Dunn came back, they started playing really well.
Yeah, they started shooting lights out and everything, and they are fun to watch. I have to say, especially when you know that when the team's not very good and you know what you're expecting. They're pretty fun and exciting to watch, and that's going to be interesting. I said in the beginning of the season I thought maybe they'd get to 30, and they're kind of poised to get to about 30. I could see them getting 10 more wins before the season.
And the thing is, I feel like it's tough to complain about these wins just because it's in order to get better, young players have to figure out how to win together.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing that. You got Levine, Dunn, and Markkanen. They're figuring out how to win, and even you can add Bobby Portis into that category, and I think that the wins they're not a bad thing. It's not like they have a bunch of old washed up guys that have no business being in the league, kind of like the 2012 Cubs, where it's except you have the future, you have your pieces. They need to figure out how to win together.
Yeah,
and so I don't think winning a few extra games down the road is going to end up being the worst thing for them.
No, I agree. Western Conference, you have Houston and Golden State are pretty much tied for 1 and 2, but Houston has one less loss. So Houston and Golden State. Now, I think if Houston's going to beat Golden State any year, I think it's going to be this year, because Golden State already has 14 losses, which is something we didn't think they would have probably all season. and they're going to get, just by the nature of the sport, they'll probably get at least 3 or 4 more losses the way it's been going for them.
I mean, also they've had dealt with some nagging injuries. Like, I don't know how many times they've actually had their full starting lineup out.
I know,
there. It seems like really like Durant will be out one night, Thompson will be out, then Curry.
Durant's out like once every 2 weeks with like back soreness or something.
And then also he goes and gets ejected.
Yeah, him and Draymond Green are always good for a few ejections every month or something.
Durant leads the league in ejections, and I read he had 1 ejection in his career prior to this year.
Yeah, he's getting a big ego. I mean, when you get on a good team like that, you really turn into an unlikable player. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
I personally never liked him.
Yeah, I know.
Except like this is just the general consensus of him. He went to like one of the least likable players pretty quickly.
I know. He was literally probably my favorite player in the NBA. He definitely was in 2012 when they went to the finals against Miami. He was definitely my favorite player in the NBA at that point. But he really turned into somebody I don't like too much anymore. I don't know what it is about him.
And it's just like the thing that I think the NBA needs to do something about is like some of these guys are just throwing hissy fits in like the final minute of the fourth quarter. Yeah. It should be like if you get ejected after a certain point in a game, you should automatically be suspended for the next game because a guy like him doesn't care about the fine he's going to get when he's ejected with a minute to go in a game that they're losing and getting blown out.
Right. And then also, let's see, as we're looking down the list here, San Antonio, I saw on Twitter that Kawhi Leonard might not be coming back at all this year. So,
and then you hear a report that says it's going to be Kawhi's decision and he's probably not coming back. That's been a really weird situation all year.
I know, and Kawhi's a real likable guy, but something's going on there. I don't know.
Something's going on behind the scenes, and
they're still holding on to the 3rd seed, but Minnesota's just a game behind them, and I could see Minnesota overtaking that 3rd seed. I mean, Minnesota's a really interesting team,
Minnesota
good team.
really took off the moment that Butler said that he was going to step up and it was going to make it his team. Like, he was letting Wiggins and Towns kind of lead do most of the scoring, except then once he said he was going to take over, that's when he's been like putting up 35 points a game.
Yeah, I mean, they're a really good team.
They're a good team.
I mean, I'll be rooting for them in the West. I know you will be too, probably, out of all these teams. So, it'll be really fun.
They'll have the entire state of Illinois rooting for them.
They really will. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
They'll probably be rooting harder for them than the Bulls.
Yeah, exactly. And then Oklahoma City has really turned things around, which is pretty interesting because I don't know if you remember, in the beginning of the year, I mean, Westbrook, George, and Melo, I mean, they were all trying to figure out, like, who was going to take the last-second shot and who was the star of the team and blah, blah, blah. And they were, like, really bad and struggling to make the playoffs. But now you kind of see, Carmelo took a step back. I don't even think he starts now. I think he's off the bench. And Paul George is hitting threes like lights out now. And Russell Westbrook, of course, is doing his thing. So they're another interesting team. They're a couple games behind Minnesota right now. But I really hope Minnesota doesn't have to play them. I hope Minnesota gets the 3 seed because it looks like they might, because Minnesota and Oklahoma City in a first-round matchup, I'd feel that's not good for Minnesota because Oklahoma City can make some noise. I'd rather have Minnesota have an easier time in the 3 seed right now and play a team like Denver or Portland. I think that would be beneficial.
That's quite a drop off for your opponent.
I know.
That could end up being pretty big down the road.
Yeah, and New Orleans holding on. Mirotic will be rooting for him too. Maybe I don't think many people will be, but
honestly, I feel like you want them to lose so that the Bulls, so that draft pick becomes a better pick.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was a great move by them too, because I mean, we knew Mirotic wasn't liked by his teammates or anything, and he was very annoying on the court sometimes. So, to get a draft pick for that, I mean, that's a pretty good situation that the Bulls were in. So we'll see. The Bulls are losing to Philadelphia last time I checked. No surprise there, but just keep on losing. That's all I got to say. Just keep on losing. We'll root for Minnesota this year in the playoffs, so you don't have to worry about it, Bulls. We'll take a break. We'll come back and wrap up the show. You're listening to the Sports Renegades on SportsTownChicago.com.